Hello and good evening. My name is Derek Williams. I'm with the Minority Engineering Program, which we affectionately call MEP. And we are here during virtual preview to talk to graduating seniors about engineering lab and research opportunities. We're very fortunate to have several faculty here and a graduate student here to talk to you about the many uh, research labs there are here on campus, and in particular, their labs. So with no further ado, we're going to move forward. I'd like for everyone to name themselves. This way we'll know if you would go to those three dots. And if you're a admitted student, put an S there, and followed by a hyphen, first name, last name. If you are a parent, put P hyphen, first name, last name. And then if you're with Purdue, just put Purdue hyphen, first name, last name. Everyone do that. Rename themselves. And I may remind you a little bit later. We want to cover a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, the naming convention, which I just mentioned, listing whether you're a student or whether you're a parent. S for student and last name, P for parent, and then last name. This session is being recorded. If you're uncomfortable with that, you can watch it later on the MEP YouTube channel, the Purdue MEP YouTube channel. Please be polite. We ask that you mute yourself. I'd like to introduce to you today three faculty as well as a graduate student who's coming to you about research opportunities. Very first, I want to introduce Dr. Gregory Shaver, who hails to us from the College of Mechanical Engineering. And if I mispronounce your name or say anything correctly, please correct me. Dr. David Papalari, who's also from the same area of mechanical engineering. Am I correct? And then also, of course, their labs are different, and so that's why each one offers completely different opportunities. And then Dr. Ramaswamy Subramanian. How close am I?
You're very close. Just call me Rams.
Okay, Rams, thank you so much. Oh, and also, in addition to that, we have a student. Her name is Robin Paldy. Robin will tell you about herself. She has completed her undergraduate as well as she's currently in a PhD program in material science. She does research every day. And so she's going to provide you with a well-needed student perspective. We're going to start with Dr. Shaver. Am I correct? And
Sounds good, Derek.
I'm going to stop sharing. And from this point forward, I'm not going to share until way later. I want to allow our faculty to have the opportunity. So take it away, Dr. Shaver.
Thank you, Derek. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, everyone. I'm delighted to talk to you a little bit about the research we're doing and why. Our focus is on reducing environmental impact, improving safety for operators of vehicles, as well as those around the vehicles, and enhancing performance, in particular, the types of vehicles that my students and faculty colleagues and staff colleagues and I work on are commercial vehicles that move freight, so move goods. Think Amazon, or think about how things get on the shelves at Walmart before you go there and you buy them, and construction and agriculture. So here's a picture that has to do with agriculture down here in the bottom left, how we plant and how we harvest grain that we use for food, either for ourselves or for livestock. So the way we affect these things are through advanced powertrains, automation, and electrification. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the coming slides. But first, I want you to know that you can get a lot of insight via the web on any number of things. Here's an example of a screenshot. You can see the web address up here, engineering.purdue.edu /ME/undergraduate/research opportunities. This is really a portal, if you will, to learn about what projects there are available at any given time for undergraduate students to do research at Purdue. This is specific here to mechanical engineering. That's what the ME stands for. But other programs in and out of engineering do the same thing or something very similar. And really what this is all about, and it states it, a lot of people think research, oh, that's just for graduate students, but no, that's not true at a place like Purdue. Many undergraduate students conduct research with faculty members. I conducted research with a faculty member when I was an undergraduate myself at Purdue, also in mechanical engineering. And this gives you an opportunity to get hands-on experience in your chosen field, get to know your field better. It's a wonderful opportunity to do networking and build your resume and get experience, outside of the classroom. Just very quickly here, there's a couple of different ways that you can get credit for doing research. Of course, you do it because of to get the experience and the exposure, but you can do research for class credit. So you can do research instead of doing classes, and different programs handle that differently. You can participate for pay or some combination of the two. So it can be a way to help pay the bills and or a way to fulfill your course requirements. All right, so a little bit more about me. So my research goals and capabilities include, my focus is the first bullet here, create career launching research and learning opportunities for Purdue students, both graduate students and undergraduate students. I mean, that is my job. And I do that both in the classroom but I also do that outside the classroom. And the primary way I do that outside the classroom is by building research opportunities for students to work on things together with staff and with other faculty colleagues of mine. Our specific focus, and I spoke a little bit about this already, is to develop cleaner, more efficient, and safer vehicles. We work a lot with companies, industry leaders, some of which you may have heard of before, like John Deere or Cummins or Caterpillar or Eaton. And if you haven't heard of these companies, that's okay, but they're very active in the commercial vehicle space. We also work a lot with government agencies and other colleges and universities. Our focus is commercial vehicle system design and controls. We practice it, we do the work, we do the hands-on work, but we also use mathematical models and theory to help us do that. And we've developed at Purdue some special, unique experimental test beds that I'll show you. And again, my goal is to get my students ready for industry or for academic careers if they choose to do that. Here's a little bit on the right about me. So I was born in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I went to high school for 3 years, 3 of the 4 years here in Indiana in South Bend, which you may or may not know is right on the border with Michigan, but on the Indiana side. I went to Purdue as an undergrad. I went to grad school at Stanford University. I have a wife and 3 kids. My wife's name is Erica, and my kids are Billy, Katie, and Allie. And we have 2 cats and 2 dogs, and one of them might try to jump on my lap here in just a little bit. We'll see. So if you see an animal on my lap, it's because they don't know better and they think everything's about them. Okay, anyway,
Right.
So yeah, right. So I love my animals, but they're something else. Okay, so a couple of projects here. One, farming machine automation. So what we're going after here, and I knew very little about farming, just to be honest, about 2.5 years ago before we started this project. But what this image in the middle shows is something called a combine harvester. It harvests grain. It could be wheat or corn, for instance, and it harvests it. It basically is like a manufacturing plant on wheels. And it stores that grain, and what it looks like in the case of corn is just a little corn kernels off the cob. That gets stored in what's called a hopper here on top of the combine. Once this combine hopper gets full enough, we need to unload that into a grain cart, a tractor-driven grain cart. And we want to do that while this combine is moving so it can keep doing its job. And we unload into this, and then this drives to the side of the field and unloads in a bigger truck that then takes it away from the field where all the harvesting is going on. So this process for this kind of operation may happen 20 to 25 times in a day when you're harvesting, typically in the fall, for corn, for instance, in the Midwest, if you will. A lot of this goes on in Indiana. And this process is it's hard to do well over and over again while keeping the combine moving at the full speed it's capable of. And so we've been developing strategies to automate this process using models, using LiDAR, using cameras, so using different devices to basically determine where these vehicles are relative to each other, and then to control them relative to each other. And the idea is to make the operator in these vehicles more capable and enjoy the job better and not be so tired when they go home to their families. So that's one project. Another project is working on the types of engines and what are called powertrains inside these vehicles that help them move and do other things, make that process itself more efficient. And we do that through some advanced internal combustion engine technology. You may have heard of diesel or gasoline engines. So most of these vehicles for agriculture and for construction you see on the right-hand side, they use diesel engines, and we want to continue to make those engines cleaner and more efficient. And so that's what this slide is about. So we've got to be very familiar with what technologies are out there today. And don't worry, there won't be a quiz. The stuff here in blue is what we're working on that's new and unique and where we have specialty. But we work with the engines, we work with the in this case, John Deere, and then we help them implement those advanced technologies in these kinds of vehicles, which is pretty cool. Here's another example of this. And in this case, what we're doing is you may have heard of hybrid vehicles. So you got a hybrid electric vehicle that your mom or dad or yourself could go buy or rent or lease or whatever, and they're more efficient. Well, that hybrid electric feature in a passenger car that you get to and from school or practice or whatever, you can take advantage of that kind of technology with advanced batteries and with motors and generators and high efficiency internal combustion engines. That's what I'm circling here. We can use these in equipment, like big equipment, much bigger than the passenger cars. Like this thing's called a wheel loader, and it picks up dirt and moves it around. So we want these to be efficient and clean too. And so this is a project that Purdue is working on to increase efficiency and make these devices cleaner. And this is one of those projects where Purdue is involved with John Deere, in this case again, but we're also working with another university, in this case, the University of Wisconsin, which also has an excellent research program. All right, here's a picture of an engine. Again, no quizzes, don't worry, but here we're working on, again, for these types of commercial vehicle applications for, think big trucks, think about those farming machines. One way we can make them more efficient and cleaner and reduce, you may have heard of CO2 as a global warming gas. We want to reduce how much CO2 we generate while we still make torque and power to make these vehicles operate the way they need to. And another way to do that is by bringing together advanced technologies with alternative fuels, in this case, natural gas. And so this is an example of an engine that we're working with Cummins in a lab on campus. This is more hands-on experience that students get so that we can make these engines cleaner and more efficient. The last thing I'll say is, I've worked with a lot of graduate students. So here's the 60 or so graduate students that I'm either currently working with or previously worked with, but I've actually worked with even more, 75 undergrads over the 15 years or so that I've been. Has it been that long? Yeah, I guess it is. In any given semester, we usually have 5 or 6 undergrads working with us. And this is just to give you, and it's a similar story with the undergraduate students, but more than half of the graduate students that have worked with me in the past and who have graduated have gone on to work with the industry partner companies that we work with. So it gives you a chance to get that experience on campus, build that network, and then if you choose to, it's always up to you to maybe go work for the company you did the research with while you were a student at Purdue, and they get a good chance to get familiar with you and vice versa. And that's a big win for everybody. So that's what I have today, Derek. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Chat. You can also, we'll open the floor right now for questions. Any questions? Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Shaver. That was very insightful. Quite a bit.
Thank you.
So now we're moving on to Dr. Capillari. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
Yep. Yep, Capillari, you got it. All right.
You have the floor.
Okay. You guys see that all right? Oh,
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So thanks. Also, again, I'm Dave Capillari. So I'm an associate professor in the School of Mechanical Engineering. Also have a courtesy appointment in the School of the Weldon School of Biomedical Engineering. So my background, so I did my undergraduate degree at Villanova University in Pennsylvania, a master's at Penn State, and then my PhD at University of Pennsylvania. So somehow I ended up in Pennsylvania for all my schooling, but I'm actually from New York originally, born and raised. After grad school, I was working as assistant professor at Stevens Institute of Technology in New Jersey, and then I moved to Purdue in 2013. And I've had a couple of different positions here at Purdue. How I got involved in research. So actually, when I was I guess it was a sophomore, junior year in college, and one of my professors had an ad out for a project he needed some help with. And it sounded fun. So I signed up for that and got my first taste of research. And then I saw a flyer the end of junior year for this REU program, which stands for Research Experience for Undergraduates. It's a summer program, which is sponsored by the National Science Foundation in the United States, and it funds undergraduates to do research experiences for the summer as your summer job. And so I was able to have an opportunity to do that between my junior and senior year, and I turned out I really liked it. I like learning about new things, discovering new technologies, and seeing how to implement them. And then I ended up doing a senior design project, which all seniors in engineering do a kind of a capstone design project. So my senior year, it was kind of a research-based project, and I liked that. And so then I kind of decided to go on to graduate school and kind of started my path that way. Okay. So at Purdue, my research group is called the Multi-Scale Robotics Automation Lab. And one of the great things about Purdue is we have great facilities all over campus. And so I actually have two labs which we do our research in. One is at our Flex Lab building, where we focus on small scale robotics. And then at the Herrick Labs building, where Professor Shaver also has some of his engines set up, test cells, is where we do our larger scale robotics research. Then we also make some of our micro robots at the Burke Down Technology Center on the west part of campus. So you may have heard about if size matters. And so the length scale, some objects do matter when you're trying to actually manipulate and these objects using robots. So if you look on the length scale here, what microrobotics is the study of robotics automation in order to manipulate and assemble small scale or micro scale parts. So a human hair is about 100 microns in diameter. And so we're looking at parts that are a couple hundred microns or so in size, so a couple of human hairs or so in length. And so this is a test bed that we have set up in the lab to study these types of problems. And so it's got basically some micro robot arms here, which we can use to move these small little parts. These parts are about 200 microns in footprint or so in diameter. And so we wanted to be able to see if we can just give the computer or the system, initial position of a part and then a goal location of the part. Is it able to automatically figure out where to push on that part in order to get it to the goal location? So we're using some artificial intelligence or machine learning, you may have heard, in order to do this. And I highlighted this project because we had some undergraduates help figure this out. So what they did was they did a lot of these test pushes. So we need a lot of training data to train these algorithms to learn what to do. And so the undergrad was able to set up the system to automatically do all these kind of test pushes to kind of get a good empirical model or data that we needed to train these algorithms. And so you can see here in these videos, we're planning a path around the obstacles, and then the robot manipulators are able to kind of choose and figure out which manipulator to use when in order to get the part to its goal location, which is highlighted in blue. And these parts have male and female features, so we like to call them like microscale Lego pieces. And so the idea is that anything you could build with Legos, you could build with these kind of pieces. So now, it's also with microrobotics, if the robots themselves are at the micro scale rather than just manipulating parts of the micro scale, we call, and they have untethered or wireless control, we call them mobile micro robots. This is an example of one of the robots that we designed in the lab. We manufactured over at the Berkdown Technology Center. You can see here the size of it next to a penny. So it's really small, right? So it's about eight human hairs wide by 7 human hairs high. So one of the challenging things with robots this small is how do you control them, right? They're very small. You can't put a battery on it. So we use some kind of external field. In this case, we use a magnetic field. So long as a robot has some kind of magnetic properties, we can control it using an external magnetic field. And here are some examples of some robots that we've designed through the years. So this first one on the top, we call it our microscale tumbling micro robot, or microtum. And so this looks like a dumbbell. It's got magnetic particles on either end. And we use a rotating magnetic field. So think of a magnet which is spinning. And the way the magnetic particles are set up, it'll just follow the cycle of the magnetic field. So it'll rotate along with the magnet. And so we can use that to kind of rotate and tumble in different directions. And here we're showing we can control its orientation and trajectory. So we're making a P for Purdue. And it's able to go up and down different inclines in different types of environments, of wet environments, dry environments. So one of the ideas is to use this robot inside the body for drug delivery, to target drugs, or also to do for diagnostics, to actually sense information and bring or just take some samples out of the body. So we wanted to be able to test it in these different environments, in these rough and wet environments, and going up and down inclines. And so we've been able to do that. And we also have done some tests inside some animal tests to see if it actually can move up and down a colon inside a mouse, and it's able to do that. And we're actually able to image it nicely using an ultrasound system. So those are some applications for these in vivo micro robots. And then on the lower part of the screen, we have another robot which we designed for in vitro or in petri dish types of applications. And this is, we call it the micro force sensing mobile micro robot. And so this has a little spring on the end of it here, which will deform as you push on a cell or an object. And we actually know the stiffness of that spring, so it's calibrated. So what we can do then is, using our camera system and our microscope, track that deformation in real time. And if we know the stiffness and we know the deformation, then we can back out and calculate what the force is. So it's called a vision-based micro force sensor. So using the computer vision in order to sense the force. And so again, in these projects, we had undergraduates who worked in the lab on the image processing part of this and trying to figure out what those deflections were using the computer vision system. Another undergrad programmed these waypoints and these automatic control to get this robot to move these different coordinates, kind of like GPS coordinates. And we had some other students who worked on the electromagnetic control system, the coil system, in order to use to control these robots. So another thing we'd like to do is be able to control multiple of these robots at the same time. And so one challenge is, how do you do that? If these robots are all getting the same signal from the magnetic field, they're all going to do the same thing. So we said, let's see if we can use a local magnetic field rather than a global magnetic field to do that. And so we made these printed circuit boards, which have 2 layers of coils or microstrips of wire, which we can use then to control the position and orientation of the robot around different obstacles. And so this other robot on the bottom, which is moving now, we added a tail to the robot. So this tail actually enables us to control the orientation, since the magnetic field will apply a torque at the center of the robot. So if we add this tail to the robot, it moves the center of gravity off to the back a little bit. So then it's able to kind of get it to align itself to a preferred direction. And we can use that then for manipulation. And then finally, we have an example here of a new system where we can actually have multiple robots working together in different zones. And so here we're showing 4 of these robots moving at the same time independently. And so this is actually tracing out the initials of PUWL, for Purdue University, West Lafayette. And so again, in this project, again, there were graduate students, but undergraduates have played an important role. We had one undergraduate who's actually was an LSAMP scholar. So LSAMP is a program at Purdue, which is the Louise Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation, which tries to encourage undergraduates to do research in STEM fields or engineering fields. And so we had a scholar who worked on this for about a year, and he was able to do the first version of our circuit board He was the first person to kind of get the orientation control down, and he really did a really nice job, and then went on to graduate school after he graduated here from Purdue.
Mm. Wow.
So then moving on, so we kind of moving up the length scale here. We're also working on microsurgical tools to manipulate objects on the millimeter scale. And so this is a system that we've designed. It's for robotic lumbar discectomy. So if someone has a herniated disc in their back, you may have heard of that. They have this disc material which is protruding and is pushing on the nerves in your spinal column, which is very painful. So the surgeon wants to go in and remove that pressure, remove that pain. And so we've been designing a robotic system for this particular procedure. Again, we've had lots of undergraduates who have worked on this project. We do a lot of 3D printing, so 3D printing fixtures for these robots. These actually end effectors are also 3D printed using a multi-material 3D printer. So we have some rigid materials, which is the white, and flexible material, which is the black one. So we can 3D print these end effectors all in one shot. So make it very low cost, and these are going to be disposable instruments as well. And then we also had some students working on the electronics and how to do the control with these different actuators. So then if you move up to the larger scale, the macro scale world, we've designed some micro aerial vehicles, small unmanned ground vehicles, and then autonomous mobile robots. We've worked with them as well. So this is what we call is interacting boom copter, UAV. So this is designed for remote inspection, maintenance, and repair. So it has a novel kind of configuration. So it's got a tri-rotor configuration, but we have this new propeller on the front, which could rotate clockwise or counterclockwise, which gives us a nice decoupled degree of freedom in the plane. So we can hover very nicely in a stable hover position, but then move in and out to do certain types of manipulation tasks. And then we have a modular end effector, in this case, which is a gripper, which we can use to do different things. And so this is an example of this platform, which we're going to use to open this door. And so we use an onboard camera to figure out what our target location is. And once we figure out where the target is, we try to find the contour of the door, figure out where the door handle is. We align everything, the robot to that handle position, and then we'll do a zero attitude or a translation where we're not pitching or rolling, and we can keep our eyes on the target. And then we can sense when we touch the handle, and then we can grab it and then open it up. And so the initial concept for this boom copter was actually from an undergraduate in the lab who had seen something similar in the hobby community, which they just used for kind of really fast accelerations. And we thought, hey, maybe we could actually use this for manipulation purposes. So that was inspired by that design. And then we've had some people actually work on some of these, helping with these tests and the flight tests and getting all these things up and running. And so here we can see how we open the door for a little drone to then fly through there as well. We have another project which we're working on here. This is with this mobile manipulation platform. So basically a mobile robot with an arm. And this is actually for space applications. So we want to have a project with NASA where we want to be able to have these habitats either on the moon or on Mars. We want to make sure that they are in good shape when the humans get there. So most of the time they're going to be inhabited by robots. So if something goes wrong or something needs to be repaired, we want the robots to be able to do that. And so this is just showing how we can use the vision system on the robot to identify a part, figure out what its pose has to be, and then we can plan for the robot to go ahead and pick that part up and take it somewhere. So this could be something that you're going to repair or change out. We're also able to map the room. This is a map that we created using the lasers on the robot. Oops. In order to get that, to map the space. And once we have that map, then we can actually give it waypoints and plan a path around that part. And so we have some undergraduates working on some fixtures and modular end effector connectors for this project. And then finally, we're doing some stuff with some agricultural robotics as well, just like Professor Shaver. So we designed this small little small robot platform to which we can use to go on the soil in between the row crops, in this case, corn crops. What's nice about this is very lightweight. So we can actually go on the fields when it's wet. Some larger robots that they have can't do that because it compacts the soil, which is bad. So these robots can go around. We can have lots of imagery. We can figure out things like how high the corn is, how many ears that they have. We can look at the stems. We can tell what condition those are in, if there's any disease that's forming, and we can tell the farmers, what to do and give interventions there. So that's kind of what this project is. And we have also undergraduates helping with this as well. Then finally, we'd like to give back to, we do outreach with lots of different groups on campus, Girl Scouts, Deaf Kids Code, First Robotics Team. So we actually host a lot of tours. And so a lot of people, our other undergraduates as well, help out with these tours. And it's nice to kind of try to, pass it along to the younger generation, kind of keep them involved. So hopefully, if you get to Purdue, you get to do some cool research, you can kind of spread it along to other people and hopefully inspire them to do something neat as well.
Excellent.
So hopefully, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yes, questions? Boy, this is really interesting. You guys, wow. You guys are doing some stuff here.
Okay.
Wow. Well, we'll just go ahead and move on. Rams? Oh, you're muted. You're muted. Oh,
Okay.
Zoom.
Thank you. Let me share my screen and then let's see if this works. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Now?
Not yet. The share screen button is down at the bottom.
It says I've shared my screen according to my computer.
You need to choose the window you need.
Share.
There you go.
Oh, there it is. It's coming.
Cool. Okay. So mine is going to be very, very different from the other two. I'm going to take a very different tact. I'm going to talk very little about details, but I'm going to talk at 30,000 feet, except for one particular project. So my name is Rams. I work at the Walden School of Biomedical Engineering and Biological Sciences. I'm also the director of a center called the Bindley Biosciences Center. And I'll tell you why I am telling you that soon. About me, I studied physics and electronics. I did a PhD in molecular biophysics. My primary interest is in electron flow and biology, but I'm also interested in a few disease conditions, infectious diseases, and degenerative eye diseases. So I use a lot of techniques in structural biology, electron microscopy, stem cell biology, organoids, and things like that. I'm a teacher. I teach a lot. I'm a scientist. I do a lot of research. I've been an administrator. I was the dean, the director. I'm an entrepreneur. I've started multiple companies and correctly involved in 4 different startups. Wow. I worked on 3 continents. I started my academic career in Sweden. I spent 8 years there, 6 years as a faculty, then came to the University of Iowa Medical School, spent 10 years there, went back to Bangalore in India, set up an institute for stem cell biology and regenerative medicine, as well as set up India's largest biotech incubator. And then Purdue recruited me, and I've been here for a year and a half now. So I'm going to tell you some of the stuff that we do here. So if you think of the Walden School of Biomedical Engineering itself, work on the interface of biology and engineering, and I'm going to tell you why that's the most interesting place to be in the next few slides. And there are multiple things faculty there do. Some people do basic research, some people do translational research, some people do applied research, and a lot of it is also working with the clinic or with the field. And you saw some nice examples from the previous 2 talks. So we are divided into 4 different groups, and I belong to the group of engineered biomaterials and biomechanics. What I'm going to do now is to give you an example of one project that we do in the lab. And the reason I'm going to talk about that is because this was started by an undergrad when I was at the University of Iowa. And the undergrad currently works at the National Institute of Health. And this is about a cockroach. And what he did was something interesting. He used to maintain, there was a lady called Barbara Stay who maintained a large number of cockroaches. And he found out that there is one specific species of cockroach, which was very interesting because it would actually give birth to babies. And then he began to observe it closer. It has something called a birth sac. And in this birth sac, you see this movie is very shiny and bright. And the mother makes something, for a lack of a better word, which is called milk. When you have time, you can Google cockroach milk and you'll find a lot of interesting things about it. Most work came out of our lab. And this mother fills the entire baby with these beautiful crystals. And these crystals are actually protein crystals. And what you can see is the structure of the protein. It's not just protein with all the 20 amino acids. You'll see the little wiggly lines here that are sugars, and in the middle is fat, and it is bound to 2 metal ions. So it's complete food. And when you think about it, and you do all the calculations and you do anything you want to do, you'll find that this is the most nutritious thing that we ever know. And it's complete food. And it's crystalline. What does crystalline food mean? That if you think of the entire gut and the stomach is fully filled with it, and a crystal is an equilibrium between what is in solution and what is in the solid state. So as the embryo begins to absorb some of the food from the liquid, a few more of the crystals dissolve. So it's time release food. So what can we do with this? So this is all biology. Right now, what are we going to do with this? This is extremely nutritious. About 1 billion people in the world suffer from protein deficiency. So they're very interested in high proteins. There are a lot of people who do interesting diets because they want to do more protein. And then there are long distance runners who want protein. And most interestingly, if you want to go to Mars, right? You want to go to Mars, you can maintain machines there, but you need food. You need to carry the least amount of food, which will give you complete calorie, all the type of food you need, and it's high calorie. And this is the best thing you can do. But nobody's going to eat a cockroach. So what do we do? So what we do is we learn everything about this. And today, this is where engineering comes in. So we synthesized the entire gene that makes this and took a yeast, right? This yeast called Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is what you use to break bread. And we put it inside this yeast. And now the yeast makes this protein and secretes it. Now what you can do is you have nothing to do with the cockroach. We learned from nature on how to do this and engineered a yeast to make this high value protein. So you could now make bread with this, and I have high protein bread. I do something else. I actually put this inside a different type of yeast called Carlsbergensis, and then I make beer. And when somebody asks me, what are you drinking? It's not beer, it's not good for you. I say, I'm not drinking. I'm actually drinking a protein shake, and I'm actually drinking good beer, which is high protein. So there is a lot of interesting engineering in biology that we can do. So this is about my lab, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about COVID because this is very interesting. Why is this interesting? Because biology and the way we think about healthcare is going from what is evidence-based to what is design-based. What do we mean by this? If I want to build a bridge across a river, and if you go to a good engineer, they would make a bunch of measurements. They would do a lot of calculations. They will design a bridge. They'll get the correct materials. They'll ask you a few questions. It's for people to go or for cars to go or trains to go. Then they would build the bridge and the bridge would work. They don't say like what people in drug discovery did. And when they call it evidence-based drugs, they would make a drug, give it 2,000 people and see, oh, well, it worked on only 400 people. So it's not a good drug. So they kept on making molecules, giving a large number of people. And then when it worked for a majority of the people, they say, I have evidence that this is a good drug against this disease. Imagine if the engineer whom you want to build a bridge, you tell he says, or she says, I will build you 1,000 bridges. Hopefully one of them will work. You will never work with those people, right? So biology so far was evidence-based. But our increased understanding of the processes of biology is now making it design-based and engineering now. And what is the best example? The best example is the chart I show you below, right? If you think about how long it takes to make vaccines in the trial and error method, it took large number of years because you made a vaccine. You gave it to a number of people. You first tried it on cells, and then you tried it on animals, and then it didn't work. You go back and changed it, and you went back and forth and back and forth. Finally, by the time you made the vaccine, it could be anywhere between 3 years to 10 years. But what happened when COVID-19 happened? In 3 months, we had a vaccine. We are going away from the trial and error idea to the idea of engineering in biology and healthcare. This is the most exciting development that is happening and it is happening at Purdue as well. So more and more engineers are beginning to address questions in biology and removing the trial and error from biology and taking an engineering approach to solve problems in health and agriculture and everything in the food we eat in day-to-day life. And so it's very exciting. And a lot of work is being done by undergrads, but I told you, I'll tell you why I'm telling you as I'm the director of the Bindley Bioscience Center, because at the Bindley Bioscience Center, we run a large number of core facilities, just like the Burke Nanotechnology Center. But if you take Purdue itself, there are 95 different core facilities of all types. And in life sciences, you can go everywhere from thinking about what if you're going to make a drug to clinical trials. You can do the same thing in ag. You can do the same thing in veterinary medicine. You can do the same thing in devices. And one of the things that we have started doing at the Bindley Bioscience Center is to have a large number of undergrads who would come and spend their summers learning the different tools and techniques that they would use to do cutting edge, very, very high-end research. So there's another fantastic opportunity for undergrads to come and learn techniques and tools and work with people who are using some of the more sophisticated toys and play around with them. I'm going to stop with one last slide. If you think about the cycle of technology, things are changing very fast. You know, if you took how long it took for 50 million users, for the first plane, it took 68 years. For the telephone, it took 50 years, right? It took 4 years for the cell phone, 3 years for Facebook, 2 years for Twitter. So the technologies are changing at an amazingly fast pace. And people have always had doomsday hypothesis about the world, that the world is going to an end, right from Malthus, who said we will not have more than 1 billion people in the world and we will not have enough food to feed 1 billion people in the world, to today, every time people have said that the world is going to end, human race is going to be finished, human beings have constantly proved them wrong. And the only reason is because of their ingenuity and putting their head into science and technology and doing research and finding new ways to solve the new problems. So now if you ask me, what are the future? What are the things that we're going to do in the future? Everybody who's now below the age of 20 is probably going to live 100 years. And those who are being born now are probably going to live 150. And what are the new things that are going to change us to be able to do that? One thing is genome engineering, and the other is regenerative biology. I'm not going to tell you what that is. The other is cyborgs. You know, if you are a lizard and you lose a tail, you'll get a new tail, but we can't do that. But we could build a new arm and stick it up with you, and the electronics could control, and you will be able to do everything that your arm does if you lost your arm. We could replace your pancreas to make insulin. So we could do a lot of interesting things. How about computers? You know, going from keyboards to mice to large screens. Now, how about computers that respond to our thoughts or to our collective thoughts? How about our brains exchange information so that we don't crash, cars don't crash, or we don't walk into each other? So there are a lot of fun things that's going to happen in the intersection of engineering, data science, and biology. And this is an amazingly exciting time to be in research. I'll stop there. Thank you, and answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Wow, you guys have blown me away. Wow, that's very exciting, very exciting. We're going to move on to Robin because I'm also looking at the time. Robin Pauldy, you now have the floor.
Let me share my screen, see if I can figure this out. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Robin. I'm currently a fourth year PhD student in the Material Science and Engineering department. Today, I'd like to introduce myself and give an overview of what I do in research and also discuss how to potentially get research opportunities as an undergrad at Purdue. So just a little bit about my background. I'm from California originally, so moving here to the Midwest was a bit of a culture shock for me. It's very different, very more, everyone's a lot nicer here, but everyone else is, in California, everyone kind of does their own thing. So I did my undergraduate in material science and engineering. I completed it at the University of California, Merced, which is one of the newer UCs. When I was there, I actually did a lot of undergraduate research. I was a undergraduate fellow at the Macy Center, which is a NASA-funded center for polymer-based research and also for research for space-based exploration. Currently, I'm a PhD candidate. My expected graduation is this summer, hopefully. While here at Purdue, yeah, thanks. While here at Purdue, I was awarded the Purdue Doctoral Fellowship. I'm also a GEM Associate Fellow, and recently I
Oh,
helped to complete a proposal and was awarded the Sandia National Lab LDRD Diversity Fellowship. So this is just a picture of me, and then down here, this is my corgi. I love dogs, so just a little bit about me. So my research interests, so first off is material science and engineering I feel is very unique. It's a highly interdisciplinary field. So I was very interested in a field. I love all different type of like chemistry and science and biology and engineering and physics. So being in material science is a very engaging way to use all of those different fields. So it combines all of them into like a very highly collaborative and interdisciplinary field. So specifically material science, people ask, what is it? It's basically the design and discovery of new materials. So all the things that have been discussed earlier by professors, most of those are limited by materials application or finding the right one, especially like the nanoscale stuff or even like new crazy bioengineering or biomedical engineering. A lot of that is, sorry, my dog is playing with his toy. So my specific interests are in thin film fabrication and development. So a lot of that is working on the nanoscale. So this is my group. This is my advisor, Dr. Haiyan Wang. She is currently the Basil Turner Professor in Materials Engineering, and she's a very good professor. I find my relationship with her is very, very professional, but also like she's very good at guiding and giving good advice. I have gone through a lot of different, very different, interesting hardships as a graduate student. She's always been there to provide good feedback. So that is one important thing, even as an undergrad or as a graduate student, you want to have a very good relationship with your advisor. So specifically our research field, so we do both bulk processing and thin film processing. So we look at vertically aligned nanocomposites, which my advisor was one of the pioneers of the field. So we combine dissimilar materials into composite materials in thin film form. We also do bulk processing of ceramics, and we do a lot of in situ analysis. So this is using different characterization tools like electron microscopes and also optical property tools and magnetic tools. So we look at very fundamental properties of materials. So specifically, we tune our material for a specific application. So this is the workhorse of our group, or of my research in particular. So it's pulse laser deposition. So this is just one of many different thin film growth techniques. So PLD in a nutshell is you're shooting a laser source at a target, and then this creates a plume of material that then is ejected onto a substrate. So we use like oxide substrates, we use sapphires, strontium titanate, and a bunch of other different ones. We can also grow on flexible materials, and we can grow on stuff like glass. And a lot of this you can do to put coatings onto different material as well. So in a nutshell, this is a kinetic and thermodynamic driven process. So there's a bunch of different tools that we can use to tune our materials. So we can look at different compositions. We can use the laser itself to tune the energy of our growth. And we can also control the substrate. So this is what we grow our material on. So we can control the substrate temperature and the structure if we want to engineer a specific property in our material. And then there's also a bunch of others, such as having a specific gas during the deposition. So usually we can do a oxide gas, or we can do a nitrogen gas if we want to grow in a non-reactive background. So these are some of our characterization tools. So we use X-ray for microstructure characterization. I specifically use X-ray diffraction. So this is a very like workhorse type of tool that you can use to look at like the overall bulk structure of your film, or you can use it on both thin film and bulk bulk material. And then this one, this is the STM TEM. So we have a combined TEM STM in our group. So this we can use to look at nanoscale. We can use it to look at nanoscale microstructures because a lot of our film are only on the order of 100 nanometer. So you need something very powerful to look at it. So I also used a bunch of different optical property tools since a lot of my materials are based for optical study. So this is just a brief overview of what I do. So I specifically look at oxide metal vertically aligned nanocomposites. So like as I said before, this is combining two different material into one nanoscale composite. So it's usually vertically aligned metallic pillars inside of ceramic matrix. One of the major application for this are in metamaterial. So in natural material, light matter interaction is guided by the arrangement of the atoms. But in these metamaterial that we have, we can replace that in the so-called meta atoms. We can engineer specific light matter interactions by having specific periodicity of our pillars. So over here on the right, so this is a Lycurgus cup. This is a very old Roman cup. Inside of it are gold nanoparticles that when it's reflected with light, they glow a certain color. So this is some example of some of the bulk films that I've grown. So this material is grown with silver, and then this material here is grown with gold, and then the material here is grown with an alloy of silver and gold. So when we shine a light at it, different colors are reflected based on the type of material or the size of the material that's inside of it. Moving on. So recently, I, in collaboration with Sandia National Lab, was able to use the tools that I learned as a graduate student here at Purdue. This is for the Sandia LDRD proposal. So I work with a collaborator at Sandia National Lab. We helped to develop a new streamlined fabrication method for lithium niobate. So lithium niobate is a very interesting material. It has one of the best acoustical responses for RF-based devices. It has a lot of application in both military and civilian spaces. One of the major limiting factors for it, though, is the quality of the material that they grow. So to grow that high quality material, they would require very complicated deposition geometries or very high temperature. But with our approach, we leverage that nanocomposite to provide a platform for growing high quality lithium niobate. So we've done a few study on it too. And usually for devices in the current fields, they're using thick lithium niobate substrates, which it doesn't, when you have a thin film of your lithium niobate, it has much better response. So our material has very stronger acoustical properties than the current standard of ion slice wafer substrates. So future work, this is an ongoing thing. There was also, this is just a picture right here of the deposition itself. So you can see the substrate here that's going to be deposited with lithium niobate, and then this is the heater. And yeah, so moving on. So I would also like to discuss a little bit about how to engage in research at Purdue. So this is just based on my experience as an undergrad too. So my biggest advice is to think about what you want to do research on. Like, don't just do research just for the sake of it. Think about something that like, oh, like this is interesting. Like don't just do it because it's going to look good on your resume. You want to be, because research is hard and you're going to fail a lot. So it's something that you should really, really be passionate about. So make sure it's a topic that you find interesting. So after you have identified like a few different things that you might find interesting, I would identify potential mentors and potential professors that you would like to work for, and go to like if you don't take a class with them, go to their seminars and introduce yourself and be proactive. I also take classes that you find interesting and talk to those professors, go to the office hours so that they recognize your face, because some of the classes that you take are going to be like a couple hundred people. So if you want to work for that professor, like make sure that you're engaged in the class and you go to the office hours. My other suggestion is also to get to know your TAs, because they're the ones in the lab doing the work. So they're more hands-on than professor. Like some professors don't even go to the lab because they're just so busy with proposals or even teaching duty or even anything else. So they're the ones that can help you connect and network with those professors if you're interested in what they do. Another great resource is the Purdue Office of Undergraduate Research. So this isn't something that they had at my undergrad, but this is something someone told me here because they were able to get connected to an undergrad in this department or this office was able to get connected with my professor through this. So it's like just Google it, like it's an entire whole like office. Like they have tons of resources, tons of opportunities, and like they can help get you engaged and help you like apply to. My last advice is to apply for summer RUs. So one of the professors mentioned that they did a summer RU, and that's what got them interested in research. So I also did a summer RU, and this isn't something that like was advertised to me. It's something that I had to go out and apply for. But look at different schools. They all have like a lot of people like in materials. A lot of schools have like material research centers that offer summer RUs, and this is something Purdue does too. So you go and you work over the summer for like 8 to 12 weeks, and it's usually it's like a grad student like experience. So you get like a very hands-on, you're not taking classes and you're in the lab working on a specific project for a few like couple hour 8 hours a day like you would as a grad student. So I highly suggest do RUs, like do them as soon as you're, your first start looking into it like your second year, third year, because they also, if you're going to apply for grad school, they also look really good on your resume for grad school. So that's it for me. So if anyone has questions. So thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Questions? In the chat, I've highlighted Louis Stokes, the LSAMP program, or LSAMP, however you pronounce it, Office of Undergraduate Research that Robin just mentioned, as well as the SURF program. There are just a few of that. There are so many opportunities of research here at Purdue, and many of them can be paid, especially during the summer. It can even be, opportunities where you can get your whole funding taken care of during the summer. We just want to thank all four of you providing us a faculty perspective as well as a student perspective. And I know that I'm going to make sure this is also admissions has asked us for some of our best videos. I'm also going to make sure this one gets posted because this is some great information that a lot of people, especially incoming students, don't know. Well, I just want to thank all of you very, very, very much. We can lay back if there's any other questions at the end that you want to ask one-on-one. I even have a breakout room in case someone wants to meet one-on-one. But we want to thank all of you for coming. We stayed within our hour. We don't always do that, but this has been very meaningful. And thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing all of you again in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
Thank
This
you.
was very good. Very beneficial. I learned a lot. You're welcome. Well, looks like everyone's gone. Have a good night. Thanks.